Hello, everyone, and welcome to Old Guard, New Blood, episode 32, How to Start Your Own SEO Agency. So this one is for, possibly disillusioned people out there that want to go it alone. Is it a good idea? I've seen plenty of people try and fail dismally. It's not always as easy as it seems. I did it many, many years ago, and luckily I got out of there and I moved on. But let's go and find out what's happened, in the decades since I was involved in my own agency. Once again, I've got a fantastic crew with me, and why don't they introduce themselves? Begum, why don't you start? Who are you, and where do you come from?
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Begum Kaya. I am the founder and SEO consultant at BK Solutions, founded in Turkey. And I am working mostly with US and UK brands and also US and UK agencies. So I have this perspective as a founder, and I also have this perspective as a person who works with agencies. So everything is kind of coming all together. And I'm at the stage of transitioning from solo consultancy to becoming an agency. So I can say that I'm the newest blood here, if I may.
Yeah, quite probably. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And Ilaria, tell us about yourself and where do you come from?
Cool. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Ilaria. I work in an agency, actually, so I don't have, not yet at least, my own agency, but I think I had lots of experience across different industries and different situations. So I think I have quite a lot of information, quite a lot of tips for anyone who wants to open an agency or wants to make sure the team he has with him is strong enough to beat the competitors.
Thanks, Ilaria. It's good to have a view of somebody that can see how other founders are floundering as well sometimes, which happens. And Nitin, how about yourself? Tell us about yourself and where do you come from?
Hey, Dixon, thanks for having me, first of all. Well, I'm Nitin Manchanda. I'm originally from India, but living in Berlin, Germany for last 5.5 years. And I started my professional journey as a software engineer and then became SEO accidentally, but then I fell in love with this. And I have more than 10 years of work experience in SEO. And I was working for brands like Trivago, Omeo, and so on. And recently, a couple of years back, I started as a freelance SEO consultant, but very soon I realized there's massive demand and I cannot clone myself. So I started hiring, and now I have an amazing team of 8 people, and I'm building this brand called Botpresso. Yeah, so that's me.
Perfect. So I think we got a really good mix of people here, and very worldwide mix of people as well. So that's good to see. So before I dive into questions, I'd like to bring in my producer, David, who also, of course, runs his own well, not so much an agency as a production company, but runs his own business as well. David, how are things? What have I missed out in my preparations today?
Hello. Oh, you're a pro. You never miss anything out at all, Dixon. I just want to deliver a quick message to those listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, other podcast platforms, other replay platforms, perhaps YouTube replay. Join us live next time if you can. You can interact in the chat. You can ask wonderful questions. We can actually put out your name and perhaps even your agency name if you're from an agency in the chat as well. So if you can, next time, visit majestic.com/webinars and join us live for next month's episode. And I'll be telling you about that and what we're going to be discussing later on in this one.
And on that point, hello to Monsi and Romero and Ibrahim, who have all sort of said hello to us in the chat. So thanks very much for saying things. And if you've got any questions as we go along, feel free to jump in if you're lucky enough to be listening on live. So my first question to everyone is always the same on these things. If people don't have 45 minutes to go through a whole podcast, and you wanted to give somebody one piece of advice, this is probably crucial, really. What one piece of advice would you say to somebody who's setting up in business? I'm going to go with Nitin first and go in reverse order.
Sure. Well, I think the number one advice I would give to anyone who's starting, on business would be thinking about processes, thinking about SOPs from day one itself. Because once you have processes in place, you can easily scale things up. Well, I did not. I started with SOPs, documentation processes in the beginning as well, but it was not like really, like properly done. So I would say like focus, at least 10% of your energy there. Once you have it, scaling up becomes easier. And you can also deliver like more professional experience, more high quality experience if you have processes in place. You don't have to train every single person whom you're hiring. So once you have processes, that process also becomes more smoother. Yeah, so that would be my number one advice if you're starting fresh.
Process, okay. And I might come back and ask you where you store your processes so that people can see them and stuff as well in a bit. Ilaria, what about you? When a thought for people, bit of advice for people.
I think one of the first thing is choosing a niche or like defining your business, because competitiveness is very high and very strong everywhere. And also in terms of like the opportunity and the what offer you want to provide. I think one of the best thing to go through is like talking about your team and thinking about like which type of expertise you put together. So my advice would be to have a strong content team, because content is always very, very important and central and key. A trustworthy technical team and a creative, as much as possible, creative PR or outreach team.
Okay, that's brilliant advice as well. And I think we're going to come back to the competitive landscape. I'll come back to that in a second as well, because I think things are probably a lot different from when I set my agency up in 1999. So, Begum, what about you? What piece of advice have you got for people?
I was going to say that treating people in your agencies as your assets and building them as entities as well as yourself would be one of the best things that you can do when starting out. Just because my eye caught that entity SEO book behind you, I think I got the inspiration from there. But when Ilaria was talking, I really thought about building these relationships and also considering your customers as basically assets, and you are there to provide for them. So trying to position yourself as not as a business provider, but as a solution architect or just like an internal team would go a very long way, I think.
I think another piece of great advice. I think as well, if there was one thing that I wish I had, well, I mean, I was really pleased with what I did do, but I think if I was doing it again, I would spend much more time trying to do is really, if you can get hire the best that you can possibly get is my advice. And surprisingly, that's not always the most expensive, although the problem is the really good people do want some, big money, more than a small business can afford. But in my life, I found that partnerships are worth doing sometimes, and sometimes giving up some shares of the company, or at least some kind of sweat equity for talented people is worth doing. The side part of that is don't give away all your shares before they've proved their worth is the caveat to that one, though. So that's my little bit of advice: is hire the best you can. Okay, but I want to go back to Ilaria's point there about deciding what niche you're going to go into, because when I think about the SEO agency landscape now, it's probably the competition compared to when I was out in 1999. I mean, frankly, no one had heard of SEO, and I hadn't really heard of an agency either. I thought I was going to be an SEO consultant, and it was only as a business grew that I realized that people were looking for agencies rather than consultancies. And for me, the whole consultancy approach may have been a strategic error for me, and I should have called myself an agency at the start. But how important is getting that story about who you are and what you're doing, right? Begum, why don't I go with you? I mean, have you spent some time on thinking about your own niche and what your strengths are as your business and how you're going to differ from other people?
I think when it comes to finding your niche, it really is connected with the projects that you get in the beginning, because you get to see what you like doing and what you have to do to make some money. So you are in that position to like, which way do I have to go and which way should I go? So once you set that up, I think positioning is one of the very critical things that you have to deal with. For example, at the moment, I am having a hard time trying to position myself as a solo consultant versus an like agency founder. So it's something that I'm in progress, I would say.
Right. It's not an easy thing to get right. I don't think it's
Yeah,
an easy thing to get right.
definitely.
And it sounds to me like, you know, you're taking your cue from your existing clients who are pushing you in a direction that you may want to go, which is, of course, one way to do it. And of course, it's where clients are willing to pay for it. So it's good. I don't know, Nitin, what about you? Have you kind of gone in a different way? Do you have a programming background? Has that helped you?
Yeah, that's right.
Define yourself?
Yeah. Well, since I started my career, I always believed in automation. And when I was working for Trivago, Omeo, and some other companies as well. So I was always believing in automating stuff because I think like doing that same stuff again and again is something really boring. And that's exactly the formula that I'm following here as well. So about the competition, so yes, it's massive, right? When it comes to agencies, there are lots of agencies. So if you just go out, walk on a street, you'll find 5, different agency offices here in Berlin as well. But I think the competition is rather lean when you talk about agencies or consultancies which are doing something special, which are following advanced SEO practices, which are talking about technical stuff, which are talking about like all this content automation and how you do things differently. So that's exactly what I believe in as well. So when I started Botpresso, the very first promise I had to myself was I will never ever compromise on quality. And that's the reason I have not marketed myself till date. So whatever business I'm getting, it's coming, through word of mouth or through my network. And I try to convert every single, business opportunity that I have to a case study that we both can celebrate together. So that's the motivation. That's the first principle that I'm following here. So yeah, I think that's how it goes with me. And about the niche in particular, so when I started, travel was something which was my forte because I was working for Trivago and the Nomeo, both travel brands, and then I worked for Home to Go as well for a small stint. So yeah, so travel SEO was something which was in my blood by now. And when I started, luckily I got a couple of travel clients as well. I worked with them, grew them 250%, 300% in like 8-9 months on an average, and they were happy. And then I was like, okay, well, I can do it, so let's scale it. So that's how it's basically going for me so far.
So that sounds quite a good story because it sounds like there's lots of ways in which you're, separating yourself from the crowd, really. And the automation part of it, the presumably WordPress part of it a little bit, the travel part of it, and of course there's a lot of opportunities to automate, feeds and things in the travel industry. So which is ever changing. So I suspect you've got, a fairly narrow, defined, great sort of stream or seam of potential income. So I like that. That's something I couldn't copy. So that sounds, that sounds like it's well defined. So it's great. Ilaria, you mentioned that this idea of choosing your niche. What niche do you work in, and how do you think people should be thinking about a niche?
So first of all, I think like what the guys just say, like I think like combining the two is the best optimal approach. So having processes in place and automation is definitely like the best way to be scalable and to be able to to provide like services to multiple accounts and to multiple clients. Also like be a partner and not like just like an agency to offer services is very, very important for like retaining clients and retaining like connections. In terms of the niche, how I would do in terms of defining my niche would be personal interest, like the case for Nitin, and also little bit of market research. So understanding what's your like audience, what is already covered, what is like still a possibility like in the market, so what you want to go for. I had experience with different and multiple like situation very, very different between them, like with small markets, like products they are like quite niche, or like big groups like global groups, and the approach is very, very different. So it's not strange to think that when they also like go in phasing of pitching and everything, and when they look for an agency to cover them and to help them, they want like someone different, if it's like a small brand or if it's like a corporate type of brand. So like obviously working in an agency and being in agency for quite a long time now, I've been lots of opportunity to go in pitches as well, in meetings. And the approach it can obviously like be very different depending on the clients and the brand you have in front of you.
I think that's good advice as well. I remember when I got rid of my agency was Receptional. It's still going now. It's still going strong, but I never really got that story right. It's a really hard thing to do for a lot of agencies to stand out from the crowd, and I think Receptional did a really good job when they took over the business. It was a management buyout, so the management bought me out, and they immediately shot a lot of my ideas down and did a much better job of branding themselves as, yes, still a first full service agency. So they did a lot of PPC and stuff like that, but they really started focusing on, in their case, WordPress, and instead of just trying to audit everybody's websites, they kind of they properly went into the WordPress design, build, market, do the PPC, and so they were kind of had a much more focused approach, and they grew very, very quickly after they lost the original founder, who wasn't necessarily, was holding them back, possibly because I hadn't found a proper story like that I think is so important for an agency. And I really, it's probably the most important question for an agency. What defines you? What makes you different from everybody else? Because you don't have to take over the world. You've only got to take over a bit of the world. And if you can own a small pond, it's better than being a fish in a big one, I think. So, okay, so let's move on to some of the practical steps then of setting up an agency, because if I was, leaving an organization and trying to go out on my own, there's so many things I don't know what to do. And I appreciate that you guys are all over the world, and so we're in different countries, so we can have different legal setups. I mean, how easy is it to set up your own business in Turkey, Begum?
It depends on different kinds of companies. You can be a sole proprietorship, or you can be a limited company, and etc. And all of those has their specific processes that you have to follow. But it's rather easy when you are working with an accountant, and they just sort everything for you. They decide on which what is it called, like industry you're working in, so which job branch you are going to open, etc. So it's relatively easy.
Were you set up in Turkey? Are you in Turkish? What's the Turkish currency? Sorry, it's been a few years.
Lira.
Turkish lira. So does that mean your bank accounts are in lira? How do you work with customers in the UK and US? You don't invoice them in lira.
I have like basically all currency accounts that I'm working with, and it just works internationally. You have all the global currency accounts and just receive per client needs. If they're working in US dollars, I receive US dollars, or Turkish lira, Turkish lira. It doesn't really matter.
So are you using, so I use wise.com for that. You're using the same one? Nitin's nodding as well. So, it's suddenly been the easiest way to send money around. The problem with them, of course, in the UK is they're not fully FCA regulated. So if they went bankrupt, then I don't know where my money would go. Whereas if it was, a Barclays or something like that, then at least I'd, get some protection.
People can use is Payoneer. I don't know how compliant is that in the UK.
Payoneer.
Yeah. People have been mentioning it quite a lot, and I was using it when I first started doing freelancing. It was pretty useful as well. Yeah.
No, I mean, I found Wise. It used to be called TransferWise, Wise.com. Really easy. So I'll give them a plug for free. Okay, if you took my token, we could all get $60 per sign up or something like that. Anyway, never mind.
If anybody needs a link, I'm happy to provide.
Absolutely. Nitin, what about you? I mean, in Berlin, Germany, how easy is it to set up? Is it a lot of headaches, or was it pretty straightforward?
Yeah, no, it's a massive headache. Well, in Germany, everything is like very document heavy, and it also requires the local language. And I do not speak German yet. And in general, I hate everything like admin stuff. I generally have like a lot of documents, and I only process them, during the around the uh, last dates and stuff because I just hate that stuff. So yeah, the road was not easy for me, especially the admin stuff and bank accounts and all that. But like Begum mentioned, so once you have consultant, you can give a lot of load to this person. And also recently, so I was even despite following all those practices and following some solutions where you have a lot of templates, you can use them and save some time, but still I was struggling. So I met like a good friend who is an entrepreneur himself as well, and he gave me a very nice advice. It's a very simple one, but I think works like magic. So I've started doing that. I'm loving it. So he said,
He gave you what?
whenever he gave me an advice.
Okay.
So yeah, he said, whatever you do not like, just think about how much time you're spending and then calculate your per hour price, right? And then you can compare whether it's really worth it, because one is price, second, that's not making you happy. So if you hire someone who can do the job in that price itself, you should totally not think twice before hiring this person. And when I did that, it was like very easy for me. Like, come on, why I was spending so much time and so much energy on this, which I don't like, and I can hire someone really inexpensive to do that job to perfection. And that person would also be happy because they love this, and they will also be able to make some money, through their services.
But
So yeah.
when it comes to the setup and things, does that mean you have to trust those people a lot because you have to start giving them access to bank accounts and things like that? Or I mean, at what point do you worry about that kind of level of risk?
Yeah. Well, that's the biggest bottleneck. But for me, like one good thing is I have a business entity set up in India as well, and my father got retired like 4 years back, so he has been helping me with all that stuff because he retired as an account officer, so he understands accounts pretty good. And the guy who's my accountant, he's also my childhood friend. So for me, it's like trust was sorted. I'm like, okay, that you take care of everything, which is accounts, because I don't want to take care of that. So he took like a lot of load from me, and now whatever was left, the German part, so there I'm finding these solutions. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
it's a kind of
But
mix,
your
right?
accountant doesn't speak German either.
Well, no. The Indian guy, he doesn't speak. He doesn't know like any even German rules, which are very different than what we have there in India.
I honestly, setting up a business in a foreign language would do my head in. I think but
Yeah.
that's so credit to you. I mean, Ilaria, what about the as that business grows, you got you see all the stuff happening around you. Do you feel that that you guys are in control of your of your destiny as a result of the processes that were set up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, we don't have this type of issues or this type of challenges. Usually, I know about German laws a little bit because I used to work with some clients in Germany, and I remember very well everything was massively double checked all the time. So I work in UK, so it's very different from here. Like when you approach a new client and you you need to go through like all the contract bits and sign up and everything. I remember very well it was very different for Germany, and I can not even like imagine how difficult it could be in Italy. It's always like much more difficult everything around this type of topics in Italy. Obviously, again, like it's not really like my day-to-day work worrying about this aspect because we are covered by financial teams and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of like different countries, I think like there are lots of differentiations, and UK probably is a little bit easier, I would say. That's my opinion on that, but I'm not really like the best person to ask about it.
I mean, I'm lucky. I've only set up businesses in the UK, but I've got a business partner in France, and him and I discussed whether to set up a business set up a venture in France or in the UK, and he talked to his brother, friend, a lawyer, whatever, and said, if you can set it up in the UK, for God's sake, set it up in the UK.
Yeah.
So which was good, because I couldn't possibly have run something in France as well, just because I don't know the law. And I think UK is fairly friendly for business startups. They make it easy for you to start, but also that makes it very easy for them to jump in and know that you're starting up. So it probably is in their interests, because then 2 years later they can come down and remind you that you owe them tax. Whereas I think if there's barriers, then that probably it probably has a tendency for people to try and do things not through the books, and then you're adding to the black market economy, and then when you get caught, you're in a much worse place. So if you are starting out, try and get legal as soon as you can. That's whichever country you're in. Okay, so what about business planning, Ilaria? I'll start with you. You might not have done a business plan, for your own business, but how much do you see of the business plans that you're in the agencies that you're in, and how important is it, do you think, for you to see those business plans?
So yeah, obviously I have visibility on that most of the time, not every time, but most of the time. And as you mentioned at the beginning, like SEO is still not really like the most important channel across everything. So most of the time, the budget is allocated to SEO is very little to compare to other channels or other aspect of the business. So what I can probably give my opinion on mostly is about how we still work so hard to convince clients and stakeholders about the importance of SEO, about the importance of investing money on something is organic, so it's something that has not the part of paid expenses, like paying Google to rank. So these are a conversation I'm having all the time at any level with all the clients. It doesn't matter if it's a small or a big client. So in terms of the visibility on the business plan is always making clear how efficient can be SEO and how can be cost efficient in terms of spending less and obtaining and make the most of it. So usually what I give recommendation on is this is the objective, you have KPIs, objective or targets for the year, and how much SEO can help with that with a very limited cost for the brand or for the client.
Okay. Okay. Great. And I'm guessing this, and you're up at sort of 8 people, so you've probably been through and written a few more business plans, so you've got an account with you. So before I come to you, I'm going to come to Begum and ask, because you're now going from that freelance process into, employing people and potentially growing there. So how much thought have you put into a business plan, and how much have you actually written down, and what do you think you still need to do?
Yeah, I actually hired someone, and I think he worked for me for 6 months, and then we made his career do the next move. And yeah, he was in a bigger agency in Turkey. I have been lucky enough to work with clients who came to me by word of mouth. So I was in a position to decline some clients, even because I didn't have enough time that I can work on those projects. But at the moment, for example, when I need some extra power, I rely on freelancers, and it doesn't go very calculated, definitely. But with the new projects that I'm having, I am basically calculating hours, how many hours would go into those projects, and if we had 1-year contracts versus longer contracts or shorter contracts, how much manpower would I need, and how can I automate some processes, how can I upscale the clients, and etc. And everything goes into that bundle. Eventually that just gives me a total amount that I should be charging the clients for. And
Right.
based on the clients that I will have additional, I'm actually planning to lay it out like that. But
Okay,
it was how it was
so again, it sounds like it's customer led, the direction that
It
you're
is.
going with.
At the moment.
So
It
I
is.
suspect Nitin's answer is going to be different. If not, I think mine is. My experience is different. Nitin, what about you? What do you put into a business plan, and how developed is it? And did your accountant make you do it?
Yeah, no, mine is definitely a bit different here. So what I do is whenever I pitch to a client, or whenever I speak with them, I tell them clearly that I'm not gonna take this project as a consultant. So I'm gonna go on the SEO strategy for your brand, which means I'll have the rights to make decisions. I want you to be in the game with like equal equity. So you are putting in the same amount of passion that I'm putting in, because for me, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's not just a project. It's SEO for me is passion. I want to convert every single opportunity that's coming my way to something big that I can be proud of, right? So for that, I need commitment. So on day one itself, I say, hey, I would need, let's say, one developer and one content resource full time who would be working with me, and and then we keep it very clear in terms of KPIs as well, because I don't answer those questions like, how much will you grow the brand, on day one. That's impossible. Right. For that, I say, hey, let me just look at the website. Once I know the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats, then I would be able to tell you a better estimate on this. Right. So this is how I go. And about the business plan, I think it changes often. So when
I
I
mean, I'm thinking
started,
of the business plan for your own business, not for the
yeah.
client's business. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
yeah. Go on.
yeah, about my on like a business plan for my business, I think it changes often. So when I started, I was thinking too narrow, and then I started thinking, okay, what else can I do? And for example, digital PR. So I've worked with like some digital PR experts in the past. I love working with them, and I see there's massive gap in the industry. Right, there are a lot of people who are selling links, but very differently, not the right way, not the scalable way. So I was thinking, okay, I want to do that, in my life. But when I started, if I would have picked that time itself, I think I would have not done the justice with what I am good at. So I set that up first, and then I started picking, other things as well. And now, for example, I'm working with two clients, helping them on digital PR, not charging a single penny from them, because I told them that, hey, I'm not an expert. I just want to work on your brand and use it as a like practice field for myself. So I will work with you, will bring some value for you guys. What I need in return is that you give me flexibility, you let me run the show. And yeah, that's working pretty good for me. And once I build this confidence, I'll probably officially start offering that. So yeah,
Okay.
about the business plan, I think I'm gradually growing it. I started as a consultant, then hired my first employee in November last year. It's not even 1 year, it's a team of 8 already, and still hiring, like every single day I'm taking interviews. And also in this team of 8 folks I have one full stack developer as well. So I'm also building a product, because I always wanted to build a product. And scaling a consultancy and agency from 1 to 10 and then 10 to 100 is really pain, right? It's very difficult. But scaling a product from 10 to 100 to 1000 is comparatively easy. So
Yeah.
with that thought, I'm also working on product, because I'm a product person. I love product. Yeah, so I wanted to keep this consultancy angle as well, because I love solving SEO problems. And in parallel, I'm also working on product, because that's something which will help me scale the business as a whole. Yeah.
So this is really interesting, because I mean my world's been very different. But then again, this might be because I set my first business up in 1988. So I'm guessing Begum wasn't born, and
I was born in that year.
you were born in 88. So
Yeah.
but because the internet didn't exist. But I just finished my degree in maths and management. So my thesis was my business plan. So I've just got this experience of writing this really long-winded business plan, the old typewriters and stuff. Well, okay, we did have computers, but and it was for murder mysteries, so the internet wasn't there. Sorry, Laurie.
Yeah, I was thinking like in terms of business plans, something else like is important to think about is about the offering, if you want to outsource something or not. Like let's say, for instance, something like is very usual, like outsources PR, especially for small agencies, like PR or like outreach is something like you need to have like someone really expert. Otherwise, doesn't really like make the work and make like the good results. So that part, and also like in terms of teams, if you want to use like employees, like like full-time employees, or if you want like someone like coming in for some projects, or like freelancers, stuff like that. And the last bit, it can be, as we're talking about, like production of like new tools or like products. So if you start to produce your own craft, in some way, like it can be like saving money to not spending third-party tools, but at the same time you need lots of like time and lots of like good teams around that. So it's always like a balance of what you want to achieve and in how long you want to achieve your results.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, I've also always found it very helpful to write it down. So I mean, even today, I used it on a meeting yesterday. I've got about 14-page PowerPoint, about where I want to be in 5 years' time, and who my client base is, and what my marketing channels are, and my cash flow problems, and and I have a friend of mine, Robert Craven, who he kind of is kind of a mentor for running businesses and stuff, and he always advises you to, when you start a business, put down what you want in 5 years or in 10 years or whatever it is, the exit point. Write that down on a piece of paper, fold it up and put it behind the radiator, and come back to it in a few years' time, because unless you know where you're going, you tend to make a lot of mistakes along the way. You're going to make mistakes along the way anyway, but knowing what you're trying to get to is the hardest bit. And for me, writing things down has worked a lot. So I tend to have one to hand, but I'm pretty old school, I guess. So and maybe life moves too fast these days for people to do that sort of thing, because as you all say, things change pretty quick. So maybe it's different.
And also, I think along the way, with the experiences that you have and the people that you talk to, your perspective changes and your goals can change too. So I mean, definitely, like, setting up your goals within 5 years is something very smart to do, but each year your goals might change, and you should welcome that change and put on top of it with each step that you're taking.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so anyway, could go on forever on that particular one, but let's move on to something slightly different. And I found it really interesting, Begum, that you're in Turkey and your customers are in the UK and the US. And it feeds into my next question, which was, do you trade in your local or your own country's markets, or do you get your customers from overseas? And all three of you seem to be, working with customers overseas. And so I guess the interesting question is, why did you choose that approach as opposed to getting people on your doorstep? And I'll start with you, Begum, and go Begum, Ilaria, and then Nitin this time around. Begum, how come all your customers aren't in Turkey?
It was actually something that I chose to do because I worked in an agency here in Turkey for a year, and then I realized that how Google works and how search works in different countries, I mean, English-speaking countries, is very different to what we have in Turkey. And I wanted the chance to explore what these markets are saying and how it can contribute to me as a global SEO consultant. And then the pandemic hit, and I started hearing from and reading from many people all around the world, and I was really fascinated by what they're experiencing and what they were implementing, what they were testing, etc. So I wanted to be able to do it myself in English, because Turkish market is very limited and the comprehension of Google is not that well. We still have head tactics that work, etc. And the other consideration was definitely the finances, because with Turkish client versus global clients, what you get is very different. I was going to say one more thing. What was it? I cannot.
It's okay. Jump back in along the way, so that's fine. Sure. Ilaria, what about you? Where are your clients local or overseas, or how does it work with you?
I have experienced a little bit of both. My preference is always working with clients. They are based on different markets and different countries, where we can use a little bit of international SEO as well. The reason is because the culture behind that, and like the approach is more interesting, is more various. So for you as an SEO person, it's probably like more interesting at the end of the day. But at the same time, like the approach and like the strategy more or less is very similar. The part of like for an agency, I guess, like for a new agent especially, I think like a big asset is having someone who speaks different languages, not only to please like clients they have like a different covering different markets, but also like to reduce the cost of like an extra agency to translate content or to do like transcription. So in terms of the choice, it's probably like more expensive going for clients. They are like they don't speak the same. They have markets in languages which are not your language, but at the same time it puts you like in a much higher level of like competition. So you are exposed to bigger clients, obviously, and to bigger competition as well. So maybe it's not like the first step. I would say if I would be like in an agency, owning the agency, it would be not like the first 1 year time, but eventually is definitely something I would aim for.
I think you're all incredibly brave for going into foreign markets and taking them on. I'm scared to death going outside of my little comfort zone, even though I do it a lot. Nitin, what about you? I mean, you're in a different country and don't even speak the language. How
Yeah,
your
exactly.
market?
Well, I also have like international clients. So yes, I do have some clients where their primary markets are, the markets where I don't understand like anything about that language, probably just hello and all that stuff, right? Basic stuff. Not even that in some cases, right? But yeah, I love taking challenges. And in those cases, I'm working with the content experts they have in-house to set up the process and, and then, working on things. So I think it's manageable because when I was working at Trivago, so they are present in 55 markets, they have 69 domains, and same with Omeo, like they are present in 22 markets, and I was taking care of their global SEO strategy. And there I was dealing with a lot of people speaking with different native languages. So it was fun. I always, so in the beginning when I joined Trivago and I got to know like, okay, 55 markets and this is what I'll be doing. And I was like, yeah, like you mentioned, scared to death, right? but when I started working with these people, I think it was fun. So it's again about setting up processes and continuous exchanges. And that's something that I believe in. I believe in like, setting up, for example, even at Trivago, and then I continued that at Omeo, and now in my current consultancy as well, I have that. So we have a weekly exchange round where we talk about, okay, what what is that someone in the room knows about or
Yeah,
they want to
Abraham
talk
was
about.
saying money talks. So basically, he's saying you go where the money is. So that's that
Yes,
is
absolutely, Ibrahim.
brutally honest,
Yeah,
which seems a very fair point to say. But it also
yeah,
tells
absolutely.
me, just looking at what you guys are doing, it tells me that where you are shouldn't be a barrier to where you're going to do business. We
Absolutely.
really are living in a global world, and it doesn't matter where you're based. You can still tackle anybody anywhere, really, if you've got the courage, really. So get up and give it a try. So, by the way, I was going to ask you, Nitin, what do you use to store your processes and share them around?
Well, Notion is awesome.
Okay, so you're using Notion.
Yeah.
Do you do videos for people, or do you do documents, or
Right
all
now it's
sorts of
just
things?
documentation,
Okay,
but yeah, I'm basically planning to add videos and some other stuff as well. So
okay,
not just like very so I'm actually thinking about, so not right now, probably next year mid sometime I'll start building another thing that I'm thinking, which is like a platform where
hmm,
you just need to select the tech stack. For example, if you're on WordPress, you just select, okay, I have a WordPress website, and that's it. Then you have all the documentation which is related to WordPress. That'll have documentation, videos, examples, interesting Twitter threads, everything that you can think about. So that's
okay,
when someone is working on, let's say, WordPress, and now they're solving, for example, information architecture, they just click on information architecture, you have all the documentation there. So I'm planning to build this. So I plan to build this like Q4 this year itself, but because of some other, well, we spoke about business plan, right, which often
this
changes.
is one of those, yeah, I'll never have the time to actually build it kind of things, isn't it? So,
Yeah, exactly.
so
because
Notion
of
is
new
probably
business
still going to be
plans,
your tool for a while to go.
Yeah, Notion is pretty awesome right now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, we're already up to time, but I wanted to finish with a question. If what would you do differently if you started out again? Now I don't know which way. I'm going to go with Nitin first. So I'll go around Nitin, Ilaria, and then Begum. You know, you've been at it, in your own business for a while, and you're up to 8 people. If you started out again, what would you do differently, Nitin?
Yeah. Well, I think I would probably invest a bit more time initially before signing a contract to make sure we have 100% alignment. Like I mentioned about passion and other things, right? So it is a, like mutual process. And sometimes I learned it very hard way, right? Sometimes I like signed a couple of contracts, and then the response from the other side was pretty awesome in the beginning. And then gradually they started, focusing more on PPC because that was giving them immediate impact, right? So their focus from SEO, went away, and then still they were expecting me to bring some magic and then uh, grow them 100% overnight, but that doesn't happen. So I think if I would have started or spend more time with them on alignment in the beginning to ensure that we are both on the same page, and that would have been awesome. So if I start again, I'll definitely focus more energy on that.
Okay. And Ilaria, what about the agency that I mean, whether it's the agency you're at or agencies in the past, what do you think, if they were starting out again, they should do differently?
I think 2 challenges that I learned from. One is about hiring people and like the team around you, how you build up. Is very, very important. Is part of like your daily work and is part of like your daily results with the client as well. So this is something you need to always spend enough time on to define like what you want and what you want to achieve. And the other bit is like set up expectation with the clients and with like the brands you work with. So usually, what I do is providing like 3 level of targets or 3 level of packages, if you want, like in terms of like when we put together the scope of works or like the planning for next year ambitions. So yeah, I think like set up expectation quite precisely is quite key. Not saying like always being like reducing the expectation, but like being quite real on that. Something like you can actually achieve with the team you have in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. The way in which you build up a team up is critical, really, in the end, and you don't know till the end whether you did it right in the first place. Sometimes, and Begum, you're just in the in the throes of taking on your first teammates. So, but I bet you've already got things that you wish you'd done differently. So, what about yours?
It was a happy, like, diverting way, so no questions there. But I think I would learn more about Eisenhower metrics, the one where you are going to do the work, where you're going to delegate, etc., earlier. And I would think more about embedding mindfulness into my everyday at work, because it can be very stressful as a solo consultant, etc. So just knowing your ways.
That is an important conversation for another day. I think actually it's trying to get that work-life balance, and the approach is really important, and founders get themselves so stressed sometimes over the smallest of things. You've got a client who you promised an email back that day, and 3 o'clock in the morning you realize you didn't, and it wasn't an important email, but it becomes very, very important to your next 3 days because you didn't sleep. So
and at that point, I think what Nitin said really comes into play. Like, finding your alignment from the beginning is really important.
Yeah. Guys, we're at the top of the show. Thank you ever so much for coming along. Just before I ask just before I bring David back in, if people wanted to find out more about you guys and get in touch base with you, where would they go, Begum?
Twitter. Begum
Twitter.
Kaya
What's
SEO.
your?
Yep.
Sorry, say that again.
It's Begum Kaya SEO. It's going to be difficult, but I'll drop it in the chat.
It's all right. BEGUMKAYA SEO.
Thanks so
we'll
much.
just because people on podcasts can't see what's on the screen. Ilaria, how would they get hold of you?
It's probably LinkedIn, and is under my name, which is Ilaria Fabri.
Okay, so Ilaria is Ilaria. Can you spell your surname?
Is Fabri.
Okay, Fabri. And Nitin, how about you? How can people find you?
Yeah, well, you can catch me on botpresso.com. That's my official website. Or you can just search for my name on LinkedIn or Twitter, and you can find me there. I'm
Yeah,
very
again, I'm going to have to
search
spell
friendly.
that out. So Nitin is Nitin, but Manchanda is Manchanda for those on
Thank you, Dixon.
those on Spotify and Apple. Guys, thank you ever so much for coming down. Just before we go, David, can I bring you back in and tell us what's going to be happening on the next show?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, wonderful episode this week. It felt like the conversation could go on at least double the length of time, so perhaps we need a part 2 of this at some point. But next week, it's
on
going
the
to be
mindfulness stuff. I'd like to bring that back in, so maybe we can bring Megan back in for that. Okay,
It'd be a
what's
good
on
one.
next anyway?
Sure. Episode 33 next time. That's going to be on Wednesday, the 5th of October. Same time, same bat channel. How to win an SEO award is what we're talking about next time. And we've already got 2 guests for that one. Monsi Cano. I think Monsi's watching at the moment. Hi, Monsi. And Kevin Gibbons, a serial award winner. Kevin Gibbons as well.
He certainly does seem to win every award I've ever got at conference.
So just go to majestic.com/webinars to sign up for that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you in cyberspace. Cheers.
Thank you, Dixon.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.